Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Munib Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. China has told the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to stop showing discord between Beijing and other Asian countries. The warning comes as Pompeo visits India to discuss bilateral ties and sign a major defense pact. Pakistan's Foreign Office said India's arms expansion is a threat to regional peace and stability. United States envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says regional spoilers are using Afghans as a tool for their illegitimate objectives. In a series of tweets, Khalilzad warned that the increase in violence will narrow the opportunity to achieve a political settlement in Afghanistan. He urged Afghans to shun violence and put an end to the ongoing bloodshed. Pakistan has repeatedly alluded to India's conspiracies to sabotage the ongoing peace process. In Pakistan, 8 students have been killed and over 110 wounded in an IED blast at a seminary in the northwestern city of Peshawar. Police said the blast went off after a suspect left a bag filled with explosives in the seminary. President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan have condemned the attack. Kashmiris in Pakistan and around the world are observing a Black Day against the Indian occupation. The day commemorates the forced occupation of the region by Indian security forces on the 27th of October 1947. Pakistan's President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan have reiterated the country's unwavering support to the Kashmiri people. Meanwhile, the number of COVID-19 infections in the United States has topped 8.7 million with nearly 226,000 deaths. In India, the virus has claimed over 119,000 lives, while more than 7.9 million people have tested positive so far. Here in Pakistan, 6 people have lost their lives to the virus overnight, raising the death toll to 6,745, while globally, the virus has claimed more than 1.15 million people and infected over 43.4 million. Well, these were the top stories. News is coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's start the news in detail. China has told U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to stop showing discord between Beijing and other Asian countries. The warning comes as Pompeo signed a major defense pact with the Indian officials in New Delhi. The defense deal prompted Pakistan to chime in, with the Foreign Office declaring India's arms expansion a threat to regional peace. After talks with Indian officials, Pompeo said the two states should work together to counter a threat posed by China. Responding, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said Pompeo's accusations against China are not new. Referring to the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan, the spokesman called on Washington to prevent further damage to bilateral ties. He said China will take necessary measures to uphold its sovereignty and security interests. Now, U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says regional spoilers are using Afghans as a tool for their illegitimate objectives. In a series of tweets, Khalilzad warned that the increase in violence will narrow the opportunity to achieve a political settlement in Afghanistan. He urged Afghans to shun violence and put an end to the ongoing bloodshed. Earlier, a UN report said nearly 6,000 civilians have been killed or wounded in Afghanistan in the first 9 months of 2020. The report ranked Afghanistan as one of the deadliest places in the world to be a civilian. It said violence has increased in Afghanistan since the start of the peace talks between the Taliban and the government in Doha last month. Pakistan has repeatedly alluded to India's conspiracies to sabotage the ongoing peace process. Now, at least 3 people have been killed in a mine blast in Afghanistan's capital city of Kabul. The Ministry of Public Health says 13 others were wounded in the attack. Earlier, 3 people were killed and 33 wounded in an attack on a police headquarters in eastern Khost province. The Interior Ministry says the car bomb exploded near the headquarters of the Special Police Forces. Spokesperson Tariq Aryan said the security forces are battling the gunmen who stormed into the facility. Aryan added the security forces destroyed another car bomb before it reached the target. No group has yet claimed the responsibility for the attacks. Now, in Pakistan, 8 students have been killed in a bomb blast at a seminary in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, capital city of Peshawar. Police say over 110 others have been injured in the attack. Police said the blast went off after a suspect left a bag filled with 5 to 6 kilograms of explosives in the institution. He said 1,000 to 1,200 people were present in the seminary at the time of the incident. Police said further investigation is underway to find out the perpetrators. President Arif Alvi said Pakistan is committed to winning against all nefarious designs by extremist neighbour, while Prime Minister Imran Khan assured the nation the terrorists will be brought to justice as soon as possible. Now, Kashmiris in Pakistan and around the world are observing a Black Day against the Indian occupation. The day commemorates the forced occupation of the region by Indian security forces on 27th of October 1947. At the occasion, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi urged the international community to help stop Indian atrocities in the valley. The Foreign Office summoned the Indian Charge d'Affaires to lodge a protest against India's unilateral actions. More details in this report.
Around 100,000 Kashmiris have been martyred by Indian forces as they continue Kashmir's occupation for 73 years. Remembering the day when it all began, Kashmiris around the world are holding demonstrations against the brutal Indian occupation. Pakistan has been the loudest voice against Indian oppression in Kashmir for over 7 decades now. President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan said Pakistan reiterates its unwavering support to the Kashmiri people. Alvi said Pakistan rejects the violation of the international law by the Indian troops in the occupied valley, while Prime Minister Imran Khan said that Kashmir dispute can only be resolved through UN Security Council resolutions. Pakistan's Senate has passed a resolution expressing full solidarity with Kashmiri people. The House resolutely rejected the Indian occupation of Kashmir. New Delhi's defiance of UN resolutions, international laws, and Kashmir's call for freedom has drawn international scorn. The suffering of Kashmiris increased manifold after New Delhi suspended the special status of the region. The government has chalked out a comprehensive program to observe the day in a befitting manner. Public gatherings, rallies, and protest demonstrations are being held across the country. The occupied valley has been under New Delhi's crushing curfew and communication blackout for over a year.
The Kashmir Freedom Movement exists to empower the people in their struggle for peace, social justice and sovereignty. Find a brief history of their struggle in this report.
The Kashmiri Freedom Movement is one of the oldest freedom struggles in South Asia. It is also the world's most militarized zone. More than 1 million soldiers of Indian Army and paramilitary forces are trying to curb a freedom struggle which dates back to the 1930s. 1947 was year of independence for both India and Pakistan, but for Kashmiris, it was a year in which only masters were changed. The scenic Kashmir Valley, Ladakh and Jammu have been a territorial dispute between Pakistan and India for the past 71 years. Pakistan and India have fought 1 all-out and 2 limited wars on this issue. Pakistan supports Kashmiris' right to self-determination and plebiscite, which was promised to them and later endorsed by the UN resolution. The United Nations Security Council resolution of 1948 stated that the fate of Kashmir will be decided over UN-supervised plebiscite. Soon after the resolution, the conditions for holding a plebiscite were also laid down. The implementation of the resolution, however, has been lingering ever since, as India has consistently found ways for its delay. Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru stated in the Indian Parliament on June 26, 1952, that he fully supported plebiscite for Kashmiris, although his efforts never came to fruition.
Our pledge to the people of Kashmir, if you like, the people of this world, that this matter could be affirmed or cancelled by the people of Kashmir according to their wishes. We do not wish to win people against their will with the help of armed force, and if the people want to part company with us, they may go their own way and we shall go ours.
As opposed to what Nehru said, Kashmir was formally incorporated into the Indian Union in 1957. It was granted a special status under Article 370 of India's constitution. After that, India refused what it had committed internationally and started calling Kashmir its integral part. The fight for self-determination between Kashmiri freedom fighters and Indian forces continues to date. Furthermore, India has used high-handed approaches to control any discontent Kashmiris dare express. Indian-occupied Kashmir has become a curfew zone. Kashmiris are beaten and humiliated in different parts of India, and doors of progress have been closed for Kashmiris. In July 1988, a series of demonstrations and strikes gave it more force. India used brutal force to control freedom struggles, but after the martyrdom of Burhan Wani in 2016, the second intifada started, which has become a big nightmare for the Indian state. More than 100,000 Kashmiris have been martyred, thousands are missing, and around 22,900 women have been raped since 1989. Indian security forces have taken sadism to new highs. The Indian Army and paramilitary forces use pellet guns to counter protests. These pellet rounds are fired aiming at faces, and as a result, hundreds of Kashmiris have lost their eyes. Meanwhile, the world largely remains silent on the issue of resolving Kashmir's fate. Unless the global community steps up and makes serious efforts, Kashmir will continue to bleed and will remain a big question mark on the civilized world's silence on the Kashmir issue.
Well, now to talk more on this, we are joined by Defence Analyst Major General Retired Ijaz Avan from Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir. Now, Mr. Avan, a number of watchdogs has asked New Delhi to halt its oppressive activities in occupied Kashmir, even with this international hue and cry. Why the situation has not been normalized yet in the valley?
Well, unfortunately, let's accept the reality that there is no morality in the geostrategic environment or in the state affairs. Unfortunately, the larger countries who can affect the policies of the smaller states, or who can ensure implementation of UN resolutions in the light and spirit, those countries have been very indifferent to the issue of Kashmir, and the desired pressure or desired urge has not been displayed by those states. I'm talking of Permanent Five, and in particular the United States of America and the United Kingdom. Fortunately, India has not been condemned as it should have been. There is no political pressure on India, and the human rights violations have gone unnoticed largely, other than a few comments here and there. Now, all states, all member states in the United Nations, they do realize that what's happening is wrong. In their private conversation, they acknowledge that this is unfair treatment being given to the people of Kashmir, and UN resolutions are being disregarded. But when they come to the formal sitting and voting or formal opinion, they are the states, they take responsibility, and they prefer or accord priority to their geostrategic interests. That's a harsh reality.
Right. Now, Mr. Avan, I mean, what does India want through its brutal activities and the longest crushing curfew in the occupied valley?
Well, unfortunately, India wants to suppress and wants to force the people of Kashmir to accept them being part of India, and they are pressurizing Kashmiris and brutalizing the people of Kashmir to accept this harsh treatment being given by India and forego their right for plebiscite or forego their right of self-determination as enshrined in the UN resolutions.
Right now, Major General Ijaz Dewan, thank you very much for your time. Now, we also have Ahmed Bilal, who have joined us he is an international law expert. Ahmed Bilal, he's joined us from Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir. Now, Ahmed, Kashmiris in Pakistan and around the world are observing a black day against Indian occupation. So how can the world play its role in ending the Indian seizure?
The world can play its role in a decisive fashion, particularly the P5 countries. They have a duty under the UN Charter to play a role to resolve all international issues that are likely to threaten international peace and security. And that mandate is given to them under the Charter itself. In addition to that, they also have a duty on account of a pledge which they volunteered in 1998 before the UN Security Council, pursuant to UN resolution which was passed after Pakistan and India undertook this nuclear explosion. And pursuant to that, they basically said that we will make every effort to resolve the issue of Kashmir between India and Pakistan. So I believe they have an enhanced duty, but in addition to them, all members of the UN, including members of the General Assembly and Security Council, have a duty to press upon India and to press upon all other parties to the dispute to resolve this issue on the table in accordance with the aspirations of people of Kashmir.
But Mr. Bilal, also tell us, how has Pakistan effectively been raising the Kashmir issue at the world forums?
Well, Pakistan has been making every effort, I believe, from a diplomatic standpoint. The Prime Minister has been raising this matter in the UN General Assembly. The Foreign Minister has been advocating this cause. Other stakeholders in the government have also been advocating this. But Pakistan needs to undertake a more extensive exercise, a long-term exercise on the lawfare side. Lawfare is a new frontier to resolve disputes or to put your strategic positions before the international community, which means you use international law as a leverage to argue your position and put pressure on an adversary so that you create more space for negotiating of the said matter. We know that despite offers by Pakistani side, including the Pakistani Prime Minister, Indian side has not been coming forth to resolve issues between India and Pakistan, including Kashmir. Instead, they embarked upon a very aggressive stance on last year, on 5th August, whereby they took a legal step to annex effectively the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Now that has been a very aggressive stance, and I think it's a lawfare move because they have used the domestic law to lay a claim over a territory on which they don't have a right. Pakistan should also respond on the lawfare direction.
Right now, Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, thank you very much for talking to Indus News. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a short break. Stay tuned with us. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. Iran has summoned the French ambassador to protest the blasphemous caricatures published in France. In a statement, Iran's foreign ministry said that Iran rejects any disrespect to the Prophet. The ministry stated freedom of expression should enhance coexistence among nations. It added instead it's being utilized to fuel Islamophobia across the world. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has also condemned the offensive caricatures and attempts to link Islam with terrorism. In a statement, the foreign ministry said freedom of expression and culture should be a beacon of respect. The move came amid outrage in the Muslim world over the publication of blasphemous content in France. Meanwhile, in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, the authorities say another 35 soldiers have been killed in fighting with Azerbaijan's forces. They said the latest casualties have pushed the Armenian military death toll to 1,009 since September 27th. Earlier, Azerbaijan said it liberated the entire Gubadli city from the Armenian occupation. The Azeri Defense Ministry said the forward command post of Armenia's 18th Infantry Division was destroyed. The Defense Ministry stated the Defense Chief of Staff was also killed in fighting. Baku claims it dealt heavily damage to Armenian tanks, missile launchers, artillery and other weaponry. Now, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for talks on a two-state solution for the divided island of Cyprus. Erdogan made these remarks during a news conference with Turkish Cypriot President Ersin Tatar in Ankara. Erdogan said efforts by the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus alone are not sufficient in reaching a solution. He said the approach of Greek Cypriots blocked previous attempts to find a solution. Cyprus was split in two after a 1974 Turkish invasion in response to a brief Greek-inspired coup. Ankara recognizes the Turkish Cypriot state in the north but not the Greek Cypriot government in the south. Moving on now, Sudan says it will resume three-way talks with Ethiopia and Egypt over the controversial Nile Dam. Egypt views the dam as a threat to its irrigation system, while Ethiopia terms the project essential for its electricity generation. Now, Sudan's irrigation ministry said the talks are resuming after 3 months of suspension of the dialogue. It said the foreign and irrigation ministries of the three countries will hold African Union brokered talks via video conference. The African Union hope that states will agree on technical and legal aspects of the negotiations. Earlier, Ethiopia accused US President Donald Trump of inciting war over the dam after he said Egypt may blow up the project. Now, in Philadelphia, protests have broken out against the fatal shooting of a 27-year-old black by police. Police say they shot Walter Vallis several times after responding to a call about a man armed with a knife. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets condemning the incident. Cars and dumpsters were set on fire as police struggled to contain the crowds. Videos on social media show police beating protesters with batons. Officials say at least 30 officers were injured during the clashes. Now moving to Guinea, where 21 people have been killed in violence that erupted after a presidential election. The state media said security personnel also among the fatalities. President Alpha Conde won a hotly contested October 18th election, setting the stage for a controversial third term. But his main opponent, Celo Delaine Diallo, disputes the results. Diallo's self-proclaimed victory led to a week of clashes between his supporters and security forces across the nation. Now, the number of COVID-19 cases in the United States has topped 8.7 million, with nearly 226,000 deaths. In India, the virus has claimed over 119,000 lives, while infecting more than 7.9 million people so far. While globally, the death toll from the virus has exceeded 1.15 million, while the cases tally is over 43.4 million. More details in this report.
The surging second wave of COVID-19 is prompting the closure of schools and businesses, disrupting and redefining life. U.S. medics have warned the country's healthcare system is on the verge of being totally overwhelmed. In Latin America, Mexico's death toll has risen to over 89,000, while the fatalities in Brazil have topped 157,000. The World Health Organization chief has called on the governments to strike the right balance between treatment and prevention measures.
Although we agree with the Chief of Staff that protecting the vulnerable is important, but giving up on control is dangerous. And control should also be part of the strategy, and the government should do its share, and the citizens also should do their share.
Over in Europe, the situation in France is getting critical as Norway, Italy and the Czech Republic have announced sweeping measures. Spain is once again emerging as the region's hotspot with the limited healthcare capacity and the severe stress.
La situación en España es mala.
The situation in Spain is bad. The situation in Spain is evolving very unfavorably. That mirror that we saw during 3 or 4 weeks of stabilization, even a slight decrease in transmission, is now completely offsetting this rapid increase that we have observed in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Russia has recorded its highest spike in infections ever since the pandemic broke out. Cluster cases are now causing mass local transmission in parts of the country.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 6 more people have died overnight due to the coronavirus, raising the death toll to 6,745. The Health Ministry says 773 people tested positive for the disease in the past 24 hours. The ministry added there are over 11,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of over 329,000 countrywide cases, more than 311,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 144,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 103,000 cases. In the capital, Islamabad, more than 19,000 have been infected so far. Moving on now, 2 firefighters were injured and over 90,000 people forced to evacuate as 2 new fires ripped through Southern California. The U.S. state endured a second straight day of power shutoffs due to heightened fire risks from high winds. Officials say the Silverado fire has burned about 70 to 100 acres and the Blue Ridge fire 3,000 acres so far. They said about 4,000 firefighters are fighting 22 wildfires across the state. No casualties or property losses were immediately reported. The latest threats came amid California's worst wildfire season on record in terms of landscape burn. Now, over 4 million acres have been scorched this year, along with thousands of homes destroyed and 31 lives lost. Meanwhile, the United Nations says climate change poses growing threats to vulnerable Africa. The World Meteorological Organization has warned that worse is ahead for the region's food supplies, economy and health. Details in this report.
Floods, droughts, hotter weather and a desert locust invasion, the impacts of climate change are hitting Africa hard. Temperatures have been rising on the continent of 1.2 billion population at a comparable rate to other regions.
When we look at the data, it is unequivocal. Africa is warming. Since 1901, the continent has warmed by more than 1 degree Celsius. And when we look at 2019, we see that the year was the 3rd warmest compared with any previous years we've had.
Africa's overall gross domestic product is estimated to fall by between 2.25% and 12.12% as temperature rises. Warming temperatures are also slashing crop yields. Hence, climate change is compounding problems such as conflict to drive growing hunger.
There was an increase in food insecure and undernourished people by 45.6%. And the predictions we have, the decadal predictions we have for the period 2020 to 2024, they're indicating an increasing in terms of warming.
Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia and Tanzania recorded at least double their average seasonal rainfall in late 2019, resulting in floods. Warmer and better weather is also more suitable for insects that transmit dengue fever, malaria and yellow fever.
Well, we still have more news coming to you, but after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, China has successfully launched a group of new remote sensing satellites into orbit. The satellites were sent from the Xinjiang Launch Center in southwest China's Sichuan province. Belonging to the Yaogan 30 family, the satellites were launched by a Long March 2C carrier rocket. Satellites have entered their planned orbits and will be used for electromagnetic environment detection and related tests. It was the 350th mission of the Long March rocket series. The U.S. Space Agency NASA has revealed conclusive evidence of water on the moon. In a statement, the agency said detection of molecular water will boost its hopes of establishing a lunar base. NASA said the aim is to sustain that base by tapping into the moon's natural resources. The findings have been published in the journal Nature Astronomy. Unlike previous detections of water in permanently shadowed parts of lunar craters, scientists have now detected the molecules in sunlit regions of the moon's surface. Now, NASA said the amount of water is roughly equivalent to a 12-ounce bottle of water in a cubic meter of lunar soil. China is set to screen the first Pakistani film in more than 40 years. The action romance film Parvaz Hai Junoon will hit the cinemas on the 13th of November.
China has invested over $60 billion in Pakistan in recent years to finance energy and infrastructure projects. Now, films will also be used to bolster closer ties. The 2018 Urdu language film Parwaaz Hai Junoon is the 5th highest-grossing Pakistani flick of all time. The movie features JF-17 fighter jets, which were co-developed by China and Pakistan.
God bless the enemy.
The film's release in China comes ahead of the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Only a half dozen Pakistani films have been screened in China in recent years.
Convoys, stand by for coordinates. Are you ready? Yes, sir! Kashmir! Allahu Akbar!
Well, now in business stories, European Union chief negotiator Michel Barnier and his British counterpart David Frost have resumed talks in London. The two sides are trying to strike a trade agreement less than 10 weeks before the UK leaves the bloc. In a statement, the European Commission said it's engaging intensively to clinch a deal before a transition period ends on the 31st of December. The Commission said talks in London will run until October 28th before resuming in Brussels the next day. On Monday, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's spokesman said there is very little time left to bridge significant gaps between the two sides. Now, the Wall Street stocks have traded mixed as markets attempted to rebound from a massive sell-off a day earlier. Decline in the shares of Caterpillar and 3M Company weighed down the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite traded higher, following a rise in stocks of Microsoft, Apple, Amazon and Alphabet. The S&P 500 traded fractionally lower. Meanwhile, oil prices registered small gains after sharp losses, but the overall sentiment remained subdued over a hike in global virus cases. Now in football, AC Milan have played a 3-3 draw with Roma in Italian Serie A encounter. Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored twice, taking his Serie A tally to 6, but was unable to secure victory for Milan. Milan got off to a flying start with Ibrahimovic's goal in the second minute, soon equalized by Edin Dzeko. The Italian club restored its lead with Alexis, but Roma's Jordan Vertout equalized again through a penalty. Ibrahimovic calmly made it to 3-2 after Milan won a contentious penalty. Roma's final equaliser came in the 84th minute from a corner volleyed in by Kumbula. AC Milan lead the table of Serie A with 13 points, while Roma are at the 9th place with 8 points. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, with the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For the latest update, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.